Hello there. Okay, this time I'm required to say something about the philosophy, the system, I created. It's called Instancology. But the difficult part is to put it as short as possible. So I would say the title or subject or topic of this uh, talking is called Instancology in a nutshell. Okay, before I start, I have to say a few things about the background information on the philosophy part. As philosophy, everybody knows, is a upstream field, I would say, uh, guarding or overlooking all the other sciences like physical science, physics, mathematics, even biology, chemistry, or sociology, or political science, whatever. All right. Philosophy gave you the methodology and the views or the value system in your theories. So philosophy, in a way, is quite different than other fields in that although you know it, if you don't understand it, there's no use. So here's the key. Knowing it is not equal to understanding it, as Hegel once said. And know it well doesn't mean you understand it well. Something to this effect, because it's a German translated into English. So, you know all the answers. It doesn't mean you really know what it meant to you. According to this principle, I change it to this way. To understand philosophy is to change your views or your behaviors as extent. Otherwise, you cannot say you understand philosophy. It's not like you pass exam, you gave all the correct answers, and you are okay with it. Like other fields, philosophy is not. No matter how many names you recite, you can recite. How many key points you can explain from your memory. It doesn't matter. What matters is you have to change, especially the fundamental changes in your life view, fundamentally regarding your behavior. That's called understanding philosophy. Okay, I just a few briefly that one, and let me come to this instancology in a nutshell. All right. Okay. First, I want to trace a little bit to philosophy. All right. In the last century or so, especially the 19th century to the end of 19th century, we have two big philosophers or giants ending this philosophy theories. For the continental side, it's the German philosopher Heidegger, all right? And on the English side, that's called, or analytical side, if you will, it's called Wittgenstein, okay? The language philosophy. And after that, we have Derrida, the one from France, but that's basically is this construction, is extension to the language philosophy. Okay. So from this, what we have from the two giants as the two trends of philosophy, one is it's a rationalist, the other is an analyst. From these two trends, we have on the being, the Heidegger's being, or he called it in German, Dasein, all right? It's from human being's point of view to look at the existence, the being. That is basically you can understand this way. It's something left, or the last thing left as something. All right? What's the basis of something? That is being. Or you can say existence, roughly. Basically, in that category. It's the last thing. You can call it a thing. That's called a being. So it's something basic. Well, from this part of Wittgenstein's language analysis, what you got? We have a language. Wittgenstein has two big systems. One is called the early Wittgensteins, the other later Wittgensteins. The first one, he regards language as a play, how you play it, the rule of playing. That's what language is for. The other one, the later one, in his investigation, he called it the net. Language is a net. So these are two quite different views. But no matter what, you can see the language as the last of expression to say anything. All right, so we put the two schools together. We have a last of something there as a being, then we have a last of something. You want to express it, you want to say it, the language. That's the last means of doing it. Without language, you cannot express this. You cannot draw a picture, you cannot put a signal there. It doesn't mean being, right? So language is a sophisticated form of expressing yourself. As a last resource, you can go. Okay, get that clear. We cannot, from that point on, we cannot go lower than that. We simply cannot, because these two are the most basic, the fundamental, the cornerstone of philosophy. That's why when people say even early as Hegel or Nietzsche or any other philosopher said, and the latest is John Hawkins say philosophy is dead. You know why they call it dead? Because no progress in ontology of philosophy. This is the crucial part. If you cannot expand any further forward, advance further in ontology, that is the truth, the objective truth. If you cannot advance in that field anymore, it's basically dead, no matter what you do. Other behavior-wise, any other phenomena-wise, it doesn't matter. So the thing is, you want to advance, you have to give something real, something tangible. You can get hold of it. That's important. So John Hawkins says that philosophy is dead. All right? And now the real holder of truth, searching for truth, is by astrophysicists like himself. Right? And he is thinking the astronomical theories like a Big Bang, like a multi-universe, like black holes, any other things that are related to astronomy. That's advance of this part of us seeking for truth. So what is the fundamental truth here? So he thinks the physicists already grabbed the flag from philosophers. Philosophers are useless. Philosophy is dead. That's his opinion. Well, it is to some extent he is right by that time, because philosophy doesn't or did not move forward for at least 70 years, more than half a century, since the both two giants Heidegger and Wittgenstein died, right? And more than half a century ago. All right. Not only that, that is a problem of philosophy advancing, having problems. Also, the science itself has some problems too. And one very obvious thing about biology is what's real or what is there about consciousness? What is the nature of thought or thinking mechanism of the brain, right? We can do all the analysis, we can cut and cut and cut. I try to look into the brain. We see nothing there. Nothing like tangible which indicates as a consciousness or thought. How can we find it? So no evidence ever found in the brain analysis. We are no different than any animals. If you dissect or peel off the brain of, let's say, a gorilla, all right? And they are, I believe it's 98% in generic inheritance, like humans. 98%. See how similar we are? That's our close cousin, the biologist will say. So basically, you have no way to see why humans are different from the rest of the animals. The primates, what's the difference? Why you can think, and you know that's you. You will make a decision. You will say that's me. You can see the reflection of yourself. But a chimpanzee or a gorilla, they cannot. A big ape cannot. Why? What's the difference? Okay. That's a question you can remember. All right, so as a summary above, we can say whatever we have from the science, from biology, any other related fields, we call it, in philosophy's term, it's called phenomena. Whatever we have in the dimension of time and space. Right? Okay. And no progress in detecting or finding any new progress objectively. In philosophy's term, it's called ontology. All right. This is the background, the backdrop of how Instancology comes into being. To emerge from this dilemma or questionable world of science, Instancology come out. How it started, it's like this. When I search my brain and I'm thinking, I suddenly found that I cannot focus on one thing and one thing only. For example, when I talk to you, I cannot think about reading another article and understanding it. As you are listening to me, you cannot think a mathematical problem or any complicated things you cannot think. I don't mean just by looking at it like you drive. When you drive a car, you are listening to the music at the same time. It's not that kind of thing, I mean. What I meant is only sophisticated or complex things. You cannot do two at the same time. When you're listening, you're listening. You cannot reading any serious article or essay with understanding. That's the point. So it occurred to me the brain works that way. In other words, the brain's function can only concentrate on one thing and one thing only. Like your thought. When you have a thought, the nature of your thought is for one thing only. So each thought representing one matter or event, whatever it is. One thought cannot have two or more events or things. You must have different thought or thoughts. That's the case. So, from this dilemma, I thought about that, and I was puzzled by that, and for quite like over half year when I was at college. And later when I find out, I find the essence, that is the essence of being relative. You know, everything we have, we call it a relative thing. All right. Any relative thing is only related to one thing only. So that is the hallmark, I would say, of being relative. If it's one thing, it's one function only. So from this point on, I noticed it must be one thing. When I thought concentrate on one thing, let's say giving you lectures, my thought cannot, the same thought cannot do a mathematical problem or read any article with a deep understanding of that one. That's impossible. Okay, so after struggle of over half year, I come to the realization of, or discovery, if you will, what's the opposite of the relative? Now I realize it's called the absolute. So only the absolute has no limitation. For any one thing only, that is a relative. That any relative things must have limitation. The limitation is one and one only. So that occurred to me. Okay? So then after that, as an extension and still keep thinking and digging into it, I find out that the relative means the forming of quality. By quality, I mean each separate essence of things, separate one. And for this one, I call it micro world. Micro world. And in this world, I have the potential being, or in Chinese, I call it 在. It's a potential existence or being. Then we have being, that is 存在, right? That's a being. This being, I would say, it's not entirely like the being Heidegger advanced. Because in Heidegger's being, he's seeing it from the eye or view of humans, right? 大在 means existing there, then and there. But he's talking about from a human point of view. As a matter of fact, he intended to write the second book about the objective being, or it, he called it, but he never did. He never did. Okay, so this, when I say being, I mean objective one, all right? The being of objective being. That's Heidegger intended to do, but he didn't. He figured out there's a necessity to do it. He is at the door of exposing this objective being, but he didn't get into it. All right. The third one is a determined being. That's Hegel's term. Basically, whatever being, if it's a relative, it must be affected by other things. It has conditions. It's related to other things. And the same thing is for thought, or thought being. I call it 思在. All right? Okay? So thought being, the four categories, fundamental categories I raised for this. Potential being, determinate being, and the thought being. All right. Okay. This part of world, I call it a macro world, is quality related. Okay. Versus this quality, we have quality and quantity. This world is called macro world. M-A-C-R-O. Macro world. So it's quantity related. Quantity related. By that I mean everything in this macro world, the quantity related, not only quantity but also quality related. Everything is a copy of the quality in the other world, from the other world. You see my point? If it's a quantity, it must come from the quality from the other world. So it's a copy of it. I call it the instance. The study of the instance becomes Instancology. If this idea sounds familiar or remotely familiar, you may remember, you know something about Plato. All right? The Plato's form. Why Plato says everything here is not real. He says it's a form. There is a form which is more real. You can think about that as the quality in micro world. Or you can say MI world. But in this macro world, MA world, everything's in spatial temporal world dimensions. So everything's a copy of it. That's called quantity. Quantity. All right? So you see the difference here? Okay. I can give you examples. Okay, before I go on that, let me say anything in the spatial temporal MA world is a copy of the quality in the MI world. So it's called instance. From there, we have Instancology, the study of quality. Okay? Okay. Then last one, what is the absolute then? Or I call it, well, let me give you the definition first. There's four relationships here. Think about that. In this MA world, that is the copies, we have two relationships. One is called absolutely relative. What does that term mean here? Is that if anything in nature or without humans' interference, it comes and goes of itself. We call it natural or nature. So I call it a relative absolute. Why it's relative? Because any limitation to the relative world, it must be relative. But why it's called absolute? Because without human interference, everything goes according to its own course. You can think about Newtonian laws, physics, right? Everything, if it's moving, it keeps moving. If it's stopped, it's stopped. It keeps staying there forever, right? So everything has a cause. Everything depends on the other one. So it's a causal relationship here. You can see clearly. Nothing happened without a reason. That's in nature. All right. So this part I call it absolute relative, or AR. All right. Then we come to this part. What is whatever human do? Whatever human endeavors to do or manipulate, I call it relatively relative, double R. So humans can interfere with the natural course of nature. That makes whatever absolute becoming relative. Think about that. We can make it better, more suitable to humans' purpose, but that's not nature. The nature doesn't give you that, and you made it. So it's better in a sense. It's good. But on the other hand, don't you feel evil exists in this world? That's true. But does the animal or does the matter, does the nature do it? No, they won't do it. They cannot do it. Only humans are capable of evil. Why? Because it's relatively relative. You can make it worse as the opposite of making it better. Right? The genocide, the cruelty humans did, no animals will ever do that. Animal doesn't torture, right? Humans do. Correct? So it makes it worse. That's how evil comes out. Because of the relative you have. Okay, so you gave you the idea. All right. Then let me come to the MI world. We have relatives absolute, relatively absolute, or I call it RA. In other words, when we talk about the truth, the scientific truth, like Newtonian physics, like Einstein's relativity, or quantum mechanics, or the wave theory, or the radiation theory, these are the truths. But they are relatively truth. They are the quality. They exist in the sphere of MI world. See this point? So that's called relatively absolute. They are absolute, they are truth, but they are relative because they are still under certain conditions can be true. That is temporal, spatial temporal dimension we have in this world. Without the causal effect, without the conditions, you cannot say they are true. That's why I call them, or we put them in the MI world. That is the reason. All right. I'll keep the last part, AA, absolutely absolute to the end. So let's move forward. We can still go from here. All right. Then relating to science, I want to give you examples. Let's say astrophysics. We have Big Bang theory, right? That's how everything comes into being. Before the Big Bang, we have the singularity, the point, right? That's called from that point we have Big Bang, the explosion later, right? That is how everything from potential being to existence to determined being. Eventually, we come to have thought related. All right. In biology, We have matter, of course. We have bricks. We have elements. We have basic nuclear elements like hydrogen, helium, oxygen, things like that, right? That forms everything from basic nuclear system to the inorganic molecules, then goes up to molecules, the big cluster of molecules to life, right? Eventually to human being, to vegetations, then to animals. That's a basic process. Eventually come to human being. Okay, so basically the question Descartes put, the world comes into two parts. One is matter, the other is a thought or spirit, is true. If you notice closely, you'll notice Darwinism talks about the changes only quantitatively, no qualitative changes. Have you ever noticed that? Let's say a horse won't give birth to a human, right? And a human won't give birth to a turtle because we are qualitatively different. That's why. A horse cannot give birth to a rat. A rat won't give birth to a pig, right? They don't have the possibility of interchanging each other's nature. The quality won't change, in other words. Okay, so as a last example, nowadays we know artificial intelligence is pretty popular, and a lot of people are worried about it. Even scientists like I believe it's John Hawking talked about that. And one of the concerns is AI will one day take over from human beings, whatever advantage we have. Well, basically, let me say this. It's entirely impossible if you see it from the point of view of Instancology, because they are relative, all right? We are absolute in the world. All right, so that's basically the conclusion, the application for that. If you want to know more, we can expand from here. All right, as the last thing, let me talk about the AA, the absolutely absolute. What is that? Okay, when I talk about Heidegger's being and also the only expression left, that is to say being, to say, to announce it, to express it, to write it down, to show it, to make it outstanding, that is by language. That is Wittgenstein, the language analyst way of putting it. So, without the last two layers, let's say we get rid of them, what do we left? Think about that. That is what I call it the absolute. Actually, the absolute is not only beyond the spatial temporal MA world, it's also beyond the quality world, that is MI world. So, it's beyond, simply put, the relative. All right, so any relative is created by the double A, the absolutely absolute. So think about that. What is that? You may be wondering. Well, let me give you an analogy. I hope this will help. Actually, it's not only an analogy, but it's also how I discovered it. Think about this. Have you ever thought about this question? where does our first thought come from? Later, when you grow up, when you become mature, and you have many complicated thoughts, let's say making a car, making a better model, make a Mercedes-Benz or BMW, you moderate it. You make a progress from previous model, right? You make your thoughts more sophisticated. You make it better. But here's the question. Where does the first one come from? Not only for cars, not only for whatever can be improved, even not only for quantities, it's for quality. Where does it come from? You may say from your brain, of course, but how does the brain can produce something called thought? This is how we have the absolutely absolute. Because from the Instancology's point of view, the absolute double A can produce a relative, including the Big Bang, including our brain. So our brain took over from piece of the absolute, or as a result, we have a thought. The thought is a concrete thing. It is relative in a way, but it is out of the absolute. That is how your first thought comes out from your brain, from the function of the absolutely absolute part. All right, think about that. It took me a while, many years to figure this out. Probably just say a few words, and it's hard to get the whole picture. But anyway, that's my effort to try to summarize the Instancology created. So hopefully you have some understanding of it. And if you have questions, then let me know. Thank you so much for everything. And it's done in less than 40 minutes. So, all right. Talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.